Hello and welcome back to a new Pace podcast. My name's Leslie Andrew. I'm your host, and this podcast is all about taking time to pause, act, create, empower, stepping into your new pace, and whatever that might be. So whether it's just a turning point in your life or whether it's something huge that's happened. In today's episode, I am so grateful to have Lisa Jackson on the show. Lisa's an author, a clinical hypnotherapist, a runner, one of my biggest inspirations as a runner, and met her a couple of times in different races. And it just feels really good to be able to invite her on, particularly with what's been inspirational is her books. She's got so many books, including a brand new one, Still Running After All These Tears, which is a real nod to stepping into a new pace and having to really take time to pause at times and really kind of lean into what's important for her. So thank you so much for Lisa for coming on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Leslie. It's been absolutely amazing reconnecting with you. The last time I ran with you was in 2018 in the This Woman Can marathon. And to actually have the chance to, get to know you again and have the chats we did before preparing for this interview was just been absolutely incredible. And makes me so glad that I've managed to regain my running mojo, which my book is about, and reconnect with the running community again.
Mm, that yeah. And when I've kind of said about like running myself and I've just thinking about your other books and thinking about your some of your way of your approach to running, you seem to kind of have just a real normal human approach that actually like it's not having a conversation with somebody that's like road runner speaking about things, but actually being able to kind of have normal conversations. Like I met you in the loo, I think, at one marathon, and it was because of your flamingo hat that I'd seen you at another race, and then it was kind of and actually, like there's something really wonderful about a race when you can feel that connection and that we're on the same journey. We might be experiencing different things. We're on that same journey, and actually we all have to do these sort of normal things, standing in the queue and thinking, oh, is the race about to start yet? And I think there's been a few times when we've met briefly, and from my point of view, for me it's like meeting like I'm meeting kind of my role model in running, someone that's really spurring me on, and then actually having that chance to be able to spend longer in a race with you is really special. So when I kind of the reason why I reached out to you after you shared about your book was that whilst I don't know you personally, I feel a bit like some of those messages that you shared in your other book, especially like Your Pace or Mine, and when we've ran, really resonate and feel really digestible and really accessible for people. So yeah, that was essentially why I thought it would be useful for my listeners and like to hear some of your wisdom and some of your experiences. So yeah, this is where we're at
Oh, I
now.
love the way you call me normal and full of wisdom. I'm actually, the slowest runner that I've ever met. I've come last in 25 marathons. Um, but it hasn't put me off. Like, actually, I always say, I really took up the challenge of doing the thing I was worst at. Because, like most people, I like doing things I'm good at. So, one of the things I'm really good at is chatting. So,
Yeah.
today, chatting to you is not work at all. It is a delightful opportunity to do my favorite pastime. And then I realized that I was going to spend the rest of my life when I turned 30 just on a slow decline to old age. I wasn't running and I hated running. My parents were runners, my sister was a runner. Um, but I just realized that I needed to take care of my health. So I became a very reluctant runner, I'll be honest. But then I realized that one could combine it with chatting, and that is how my whole running journey started. So I know that I'm obsessed by medals. I have a 2 meter long curtain pole in my kitchen that I installed myself, and it is groaning with medals, and I love running my hand along them and hearing that tinkling sound.
Mm,
Actually, the thing that's the most precious to me of my now 30-year career in running is actually the people I met. So the fact that people do come up and remember me, because I do always wear my flamingo hat now, and I remember them. I remember another woman I met called Auntie Rendell, Antoinette Rendell. She's in your place or mine. And I hadn't run with her for absolute ages. The last time I ran with her was in Malta, and she came up to me in the toilet queue, and we just screamed. I just screamed, Auntie! And she was Lisa! And this lovely chat in the loo queue. She's much faster than me, so off she went. And the next minute, I found her collapsed in the medical tent, and
Oh,
she was having real problems with her heart. And I said to my husband, Graham, you go and get her luggage. Oh, no, sorry. You stay with her, and I'm going to go and get her luggage. And so he held her hand, and she had an ECG, and she was actually fine. And she said she thinks her sports bra was too tight. She should have loosened her bra. It was so funny. So he got to know her. I ran off to get her luggage, and it was just amazing. And then again, another moment that she had two people to look after her after a race, just from a random encounter in Malta. So that to me is the precious thing about running. I've collected so many friends and acquaintances all around the world who've all enriched my lives. My life, the stories they've told me, the inspiration they are to me. I mean, running with 80-year-old marathon runners and going, oh my goodness, I really hope I can be like this when I'm their age. I recently wrote an article about Colette O'Hagan. She's done her 1,000th marathon and she's
wow.
75 years old. And since she did that, she's run another 25. So, I always
Yes.
feel that there's always someone for us to be inspired by. So I'm very touched that you find me inspirational. And I think that's where, if I try to be, a running writer like the traditional ones, I would never have been hired by anybody. I wouldn't be a columnist on Runner's World. I wouldn't work for Women's Running because I have nothing to offer in how to get faster. I really don't. I mean, okay, I've got a few tips like do squats and lunges and go to speed training, but that's about it. So that's where it ends. And even my tips, like eat chocolate, eat dairy milk at 30K. I mean, that goes against every sports nutritionist's advice. It's just, well, it works for me and take it or leave it. So I'm not trying to give advice to anyone, but I am trying to be an example of someone, for whom it's about finishing lines, not finishing times. So
Mm,
actually, when you mentioned my second book, my second running book, Your Pace or Mine, that title was going to be, it's not about the time you do, but the time you have.
yeah.
So it wasn't about that stressful feeling of I'm falling behind my pace, I've got to get faster, everybody else is better than me. It wasn't anything to do with that. It was actually the time you have. So it's the fancy dress you chose to wear, the scenery you ran through, the other runners you connected with, the children you high-fived. To me, that's what running's really about. And so there aren't many people talking about that. And so I inadvertently became a trailblazer. And then, funny enough, my first book, Running Made Easy, which is still in print now, 20 years later, that was sharing a secret that I thought I discovered, but actually Jeff Galloway had discovered it long before me and popularized it in America. But this was before the Couch to 5K app. So it was just about running for 60 seconds at a time
Mm,
and then having a 2-minute walk break. And before that, it always viewed walking as failing and cheating. And when I discovered walk running and found I could run a marathon 10 minutes faster than the one where I'd run all the way, and that my recovery went down from 3 weeks where I couldn't walk properly. I really looked like I'd been riding, a bull in
yeah.
rodeo, to recovering in 3 days. I realized this was something I had to share with other people. So I co-wrote that book. And that sold 120,000 copies. And
Mm,
many people come up to me now to this day and say, Lisa, you're the reason I run, is I
mm,
started running like that. Thank goodness there's the Couch to 5K now. That's a high-tech app. But for people who don't like that kind of thing, which I don't, I'm a real technophobe, a book, a really colorful book with full of little fill-in charts and illustrations was their gateway drug, into running. So I'm
yeah.
really feel so privileged that I've managed to share my passion for the sport, which I have an absolute love-hate relationship with. I find every run challenging. I found a little key thing now, which has totally transformed my running, which is having a 5-minute walking warm-up. I'm
Mm,
a very busy person. I've always got 700 projects on the go. So I never had time for a walking warm up before, but now I've introduced it into my running and it just makes every run start out so much better. And I give myself this little kind of get out clause because I say, if you go for that 5-minute walk and you're just hating it, you can come back. But then at least I've still done a 10-minute walk. Well, I've never come back once so far, but I always know I can. So that
mm,
just makes me feel more positive about the whole experience.
yeah.
So, yeah, I feel very honored to become part of the running community, to be invited to be a Runner's World columnist so I can share my thoughts from the back of the pack, every month. And then, I learned so much during my husband's terminal illness. He had mesothelioma, which is asbestos-related lung cancer. So for 4 years, I really fought the fight to keep him alive, and I learned so much along the way: mental strategies, health strategies, etc. And I didn't want all of that to go to waste. I also then experienced my father developing dementia, the death of my sister, and then the death of my father. So in three deaths in 17 months was a lot to cope with. But I did have a lot of strategies that I developed over the years from my job as a hypnotherapist, from teaching hypnobirthing as well, which is another job I do. And I just thought, I didn't read one book that gave me all this advice, and I just wanted to condense it into one book. But the peg I hang it on was the loss of my running mojo. So while I was fighting for my husband's life, doing all the research I possibly could, attending every single medical appointment that I possibly could, I learned a great deal of very, very valuable information, but I didn't have the energy to run as well. So my running fell off a cliff. I'm not saying I didn't run at all, because I did, and it sometimes was the only thing that kept me sane, and it's something that helped me to burn off the fury at some of the behavior of some of these medical professionals, because I swear I would have self-combusted if I hadn't
Mm,
had running to turn to, because I just got so angry and frustrated at some of the things that happened. But I didn't run regularly, which I really, really regret. But I just did not have the fight in me anymore. I just had so much fight to keep my husband alive and fighting the medical professionals in the nicest, most charming possible way, of course, for 4 long years. And then I really wanted to get back into running after that. So I moved to Worthing 3 months after my husband died. And I started going to hot yoga, and I would run down there, which is a kilometer and a half from my house. And then on the way back from hot yoga, I just couldn't start running again. And I kept bargaining with myself, going, okay, well, just take it easy now. Have another little 5 minute walk, and then you can start again, or start trying to run when you get to the seafront. And then it's like, couldn't run between two lampposts. And that
mm,
was so terrifying to me. And then at the same time, I've been doing so much hinging forward in yoga because I couldn't keep up with the yoga class. So I thought, oh, well, I'll just at least work on my flexibility and try and touch my toes. Because at the time, as now, touching my toes is actually touching my knees. I'm that
mm.
unflexible. And I hinged forward one day at home and I couldn't get up. I was just bent over like a boomerang. And thank God I had an appointment with a physio booked already. So I went to see her by taxi because I couldn't drive. I couldn't even go to the loo properly because I literally was like this in
Yeah.
utter agony. I've just never felt
Wow.
pain like it. And she fixed me in one session, believe it or not, absolute miracle worker. But she said to me, Lisa, there is just absolutely no way you can continue running at the moment. She said, I'm not going to stop you running because I know it's really important to you, but you can't run the 2 marathons you've entered in your husband's honor. For sure you can't. So that meant I didn't run for quite a few months. And then when I wanted to come back to running, I just found it so difficult, like so difficult. And I suddenly realized that I was actually trying to compare myself to the woman who in 2015 ran 28 marathons. I was trying to compare myself to someone who was capable of running 56 miles in one day, which I'd done at the Comrades Marathon in South Africa. And I just had to stop comparing. There's an expression, compare and despair. And I just thought, stop comparing yourself to your former self or anybody else around you. You need to start really at the beginning. So I had the goal of running a mile, which I did in Worthing along the seafront, so it was mercifully flat. And so, to tie in with what your podcast is all about, I had to take that pause. I had to stop and say to myself, what's going wrong here? And what was going wrong was trying to be the runner I used to be without any training. And I
Mm,
just needed to accept. It's another Buddhist concept, sorry. It's a Buddhist concept of acceptance. I just had to accept I was in a different place. So I paused, I reassessed everything. But then the most important thing is I acted. I
mm,
actually went on that 1 mile run. And that 1 mile run was transformational because it was well within my comfort zone. It wasn't even in my stretch zone. It was in my comfort zone. I knew I could run a mile. I just could. So I just really, and my back had healed by then. And I ran my mile. And when I came back, I saw a beautiful sight. We have a wind farm offshore here. And there was a windmill with a rainbow piercing through the clouds. And it looked as if the rainbow was powering the wind turbine. And my heart just filled with happiness. And I thought, if you weren't out here running, you would have missed this sight. And as I continued running, I found other sights to see, like babies in strollers, or sea swimming group, or seagulls, or crows, which is my husband's spirit animal.
mm,
Or I saw the most spectacular sunsets. So I suddenly realized taking action was super important. So I built up very, very gradually from there. I did a park run after that with a 74-year-old woman who could walk at the pace I ran. And instead of going, how embarrassing that a 74-year-old who's recovering from an injury can go faster than you, I thought, I'm going to enjoy her company. I'm going to learn about her life. I'm going to share mine with her. We had a photo at the finish. And it was just amazing. So I built up gradually from that and ended up doing a half marathon in the New Forest, which was amazing as well, running in those ancient forests. There's thousand-year-old trees there with the ponies running wild. Met some people who
Mm.
recognized me, like you have at races. That just felt so great. Someone came up to me at the start line and said, I read your column in Runner's World. I know what happened with your husband. I just want to wish you good luck today. And gave me this massive hug. It was just so beautiful. So I then realized what I truly love about running, and it is the connection with the community. So, I created then, as part of your acronym for PACE, new PACE, created a new relationship with running where I wasn't comparing myself to my former self or anybody else. I really didn't care what anyone else thought of me. I don't know if I came last in that half marathon, but I probably did. And what I did was I created a new running habit. So I started running a lot more regularly, aiming for 3 sessions a week, if not four. And slowly but surely, I got my running mojo back. And that empowered me to run the 2025 Brighton Marathon, which is the final chapter of still running after all these
Mm.
tests, a runner's journey through grief. Because I wanted to run that marathon in my husband's honor, because I was going to carry his ashes with me. So I carried a small pouch of his ashes the whole way. And when I finished, I accepted my medal like an Olympian by bowing my head, as is my tradition. And then my friend Emma, who'd come on my longest runs with me, she brought her dog Woody the Woodster down as well. And she is an art director, and she came along to take photos of me as I sprinkled Graham's ashes, in the English Channel. So that was a very special race to choose because Graham had actually run parts of Brighton with me. Most of the time, he was much faster than me. So we'd see each other at the beginning and see each other at the end and never see each other again. But I remember running down the road at the start of the race, and every time someone called out my name, either from my flamingo hats or my name on my t-shirt, I would speed up. And I didn't even know I was doing it until he said, Lisa, your pace is so erratic and you mustn't pay, it gets faster every time someone cheers for you because everyone's cheering for you. So I remember these moments. It was very emotional going to the start. And I actually asked him, I said, please look after me today because I wasn't actually sure I could do a marathon anymore. I hadn't done one for 7 years. And I was really scared. And I actually thought it might be my last marathon ever. So I really wanted it to be special and not horrendous. And of course, it turned out to be absolutely magnificent. I met so many people from the 100 Marathon Club and my running days who I ran some miles with or just high fived or hugged. And then I was joined by a man called Peter Rook, and his surname, Rook, is actually a type of bird. And Graham's spirit animal, which came to me after he died, is a crow. And they're part of the corvid family. So rooks and crows are the same family. And this man recognized me because he'd been listening to my audiobook during his training. And it turned out both of us had a connection to cancer because his wife, Dominique, had breast cancer. And obviously, Graham and my dad actually had cancer as well. And my mother had survived cancer too. So I think he was sent to me to look after me, to encourage me and inspire me because I met him with 6 miles to go. And by then, the wheels had come off. I hadn't had time to do all the long runs in my training program. So when I went out with Emma, my longest run was about 16 miles. And I hitched up with someone from the 100 Marathon Club for a little bit after that. And she was amazing, but I stopped to take a photo of a poster on a tree. And the next minute she was just gone. And he came to me at my darkest moment where I was just thinking, I just don't know how I can finish this. I just don't. This is going to be horrendous for the next 6 miles. This is going to kill me. And then he came up, bounding up, and said he recognized my voice as well from my audiobook. And we just had such a wonderful chat about life and cancer and the people we loved. And then, to have his wife standing at the finish line was amazing. And so, yeah, it just brought back everything I love about marathon running. And I think the day after I entered Brighton 2026, because it wasn't going to be my last marathon after all. And I just feel I've been welcomed back, with open arms by the running community and running itself. I feel like running is like an old friend. If you haven't seen a friend for 10 years or 2 weeks, when you get together, it just feels the same. And it did. It really brought back all the joy and all the agony, of course, of marathon running. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm firmly back. in the running community again.
I love that. And there's so many layers to what you just shared. Things about comparison to other people, even comparison to yourself, that connection to like and the social elements of it, as well as the, that community and that like keeping going. And, just the fact that it's so easy to think, actually, I can't do this at all. And these kind of, hitting that wall sort of thing. And my sort of experience of speaking with you and some of those sorts of narratives of hitting the wall is like, well, it's okay, we just go slower. So
Yeah.
we just keep going slower. And part of hitting the wall is that maybe we've just been going too fast. And that actually you kind of coming back and doing that, and then actually we've got this. And then imagine that just hearing you speak about that and speaking about Graham, like holding Graham's ashes in that time and running a marathon puts a lot takes a lot out of people physically and emotionally. So I can only kind of imagine what that would be like for you, just
Oh,
given
I was
like
in
all that
tears. I was in
experience.
tears at the start. I really was, because I said goodbye to all my friends who'd come with me because they were in different pens. And then I went to hand in my baggage, and I was assigned to G, the baggage drop G area, and that was my nickname for Graham. I always called him G. And I just
Yeah,
asked a
yeah.
random woman, I said, could you just take a photo of me here? And she said, why here? And I said, because it's G, it's my husband's nickname. Like, if anything is a sign that my husband's here today, this is it. And she was crying by then she'd taken the photo. She was crying and I was in tears. So yeah, it was a very, very emotional experience. And yeah, I was so thrilled when you reached out to me because, we did an epic race together. It was actually my last marathon before
Mm,
a break of 7 years. We did the This Woman Can marathon in 2018. And I'll never forget your group because I was
mm.
the official sweeper, which I've only ever been once because I didn't really want a lot of responsibility. At those days, I was terrible with my mobile phone, etc. But I told them I'd do it. And I hung behind you guys because, no, I kept ahead of you. Sorry, I kept ahead of you because I was so scared that once I fell behind you, I'd just be on my own. So I tried to try and get a bit of kind of mileage under the belt first. And then I just heard this whooping and hollering, and you were in a part of a group of people. We had a blind runner.
Nettie,
We had Caroline who was doing her first one.
yeah.
We had your friend Sheena and your spirit
Lee.
and energy. And you were, of course, almost clicking your heels and doing cartwheels and leapfrogging along the course. And so I
Oh, I
was so
don't know
thrilled
about
when you
that.
guys joined me. And we had such an adventure. I mean, getting Nettie, it was a very, very difficult course with many technical areas, huge steps to walk down, cliffside paths, stiles to climb over. And we just worked as a team. I'll just never forget that. We put Nettie in the middle. So, and I think I was, what I recall at one time, I had my hand on her backpack, the handle of her
Yeah,
backpack, so that if she was going to trip, I could stop her from falling. And she had to put so much trust in us. And her guide was Sheena, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, and so she had her hands on Sheena's shoulders. And sometimes Sheena would just say, take a deep step down. And the step was like half a meter high. And Nettie would just do it. And I just thought I would be terrified. So she was just an absolute inspiration. We had so much fun. We had so many laughs. So, of course, I
Mm.
could never forget you after that experience.
Yeah, and I think there's something really special about and interesting about kind of I've been at the back of the pack many times running, and I've had times when I've had a car behind me going, hurry up, sort of thing, or you've had someone
Oh,
behind you. And sometimes it's motivated me to run more, but other times it's just hasn't because there's maybe been a perception that the reason why you're at the back is because you're just not motivated enough to go faster. It's like, no, this is my pace. This is where I'm
absolutely.
at. And actually, so it was lovely when you became part of our group, when it felt like you were kind of going ahead a little bit and then you were there and then you were, and actually we were like, I would just remember the pit stops of having like a little picnic of a cup of food. I've never forgotten that because it's
Oh,
one thing.
yeah, I
Like,
do takeaways from the aides.
takeaway, that's
Takeaways, you got to get your takeaway because I
yeah,
can't eat fast. I'm also, again, I don't eat fast. I talk fast, but I can't run fast and I can't eat fast. Yeah, so get your
yeah.
value for money, like take a takeaway. Yeah, I
So,
didn't know I
so
taught you that. That's hilarious.
yeah, you taught me that, and then that was definitely something that we can remember and like working through. And it was it's interesting when you don't really know how it's going to be, and we're just gonna keep going regardless. And like all of those experiences of meeting you at races, or talking with other people at races who have this expectation of we're just going to keep going regardless. And if physically we have to stop, we have to stop. If our mindset says stop, no, we're going to keep going. And that's the
Absolutely.
thing, that actually emotionally, there's things that feel like I can't do this any longer. It can feel like so hard and almost impossible, but then something inside keeps you going, sort of thing.
But that's a
Yeah.
metaphor for life as well.
Yeah.
Like what I learned running was very translatable for when my husband became ill.
Mm,
Because, I've always researched marathons a lot, mainly because I need to find ones that have got long enough cutoffs to allow me to finish.
I do
And then
that.
I loved researching, marathons around the world. I would always combine them with a holiday. So I knew, research was important in my husband's cancer journey. And then I just knew mindset was going to be absolutely vital because, getting through a marathon is a battle. And going on a cancer journey, although we didn't use the term battle, we said we're going to heal your cancer, not fight it. But, truth to tell, it's a massive battle with yourself and your emotions and your mental state. And I said to Graham, if we don't remain positive during your illness, cancer will have robbed us of all the time we have left, all of it,
Mm,
every single moment of it. If we're just sitting here thinking, we are on death row, you've had a death sentence, and we've got to contemplate your death and how life is going to be after you die. We would have been miserable all the time, depressed all the time, and in fear, living in fear all the time. So we made a conscious decision to live in hope, not fear. And
mm.
that meant we went traveling together. We went to loads of different countries. The minute Graham had his surgery and got better, the first thing we did was go and run a half marathon in Karlovy Vary, which is in the Czech Republic. And I
Oh,
was kicked off the course for being too slow, which is the
oh.
first for me. I've never actually been kicked off a course. Oh no, I had once in a marathon. Okay, but never in a half marathon. And Graham finished, and he said, not bad for an old man who's just finished chemo. So we embraced life. We carried on with our running. We traveled. We made the most of every day. We drank tea in bed every single day together, which was usually before that, it was a weekend treat and it was my favorite part of the week. And now we decided every day we're going to drink tea in bed. So he went to work a little bit later every day and made up the time at lunchtime and after work because he was incredibly conscientious. But we found a way to really, really embrace life. And that was from that mindset of keep going, stay positive, which is what I do in marathons. I mean, you'll find I never said a negative word when I was out there on that course. And that's my personal worst. That course, we did it in 11 hours and 40 minutes. It's the
Yes.
slowest I've ever done a marathon. My feet were killing me by the time we finished because we had to wait for, I think, an hour and a half for the ambulance to arrive for Caroline in searing heat as well. And they kept that finish line open for us. They still had food for us. The chef stayed behind to welcome us back. The race director, Jo Earlham, I don't know if you remember her, came out to find us on the course because we got a little bit lost because I was your sweeper. And she came to find us. She walked back with us. It was an incredible feeling to finish. And that is the mindset you need in a cancer journey is to just go, as long as I'm moving forward, it's okay. It doesn't matter what speed it is. And yeah, and sometimes you do have to pause. You actually have to pause and restock and think, okay, that didn't work. What can we do instead? But you've got
Mm.
to keep moving forward. And, in the cancer journey, I mean, one of the things was we had many, many setbacks along the way. For example, Graham was on an immunotherapy trial and the drug didn't work. So his
Oh,
cancer carried on progressing. And it only works in 26% of people, but we immediately thought it's going to be him. It's going to be the 26%. And
yeah.
he wasn't. And you just have to pause and regroup and say, okay, what else can we try? And they said, okay, there's a drug called epirubicin, and that's another different cancer drug. Let's try that. And I was like, absolutely. And then later on, the cancer sadly went to Graham's brain. And, I just said, well, what else can we try? And they said, well, whole brain radiotherapy, which didn't work on Graham at all. It made him worse, actually. But it was still, trying different things all the time. So, we lived on in hope all the way till his last breath. Um, I never gave up hope that he would carry on living. And then it spared me kind of pre-grieving his death before it was necessary, because when he's going to die, he's going to die. And I'll have the rest of my life to, go into mourning over that. But while he
Mm.
was alive, we just made the most of every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear, that the importance of that time that you had together and the mirror of running of it's not the time you do, it's the time you have. And
Absolutely. And it's
actually,
actually, yeah, I never
yeah,
thought of that.
it's
You're absolutely right.
those
It's not how
precious
much
moments.
life you've got, it's the life, how many years you've got. It's the life in those years. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not it's those precious moments that of course there's going to be things that are literally just you two that nobody will ever experience, that no amount of words would help us to understand. So those connections, when you hear when someone takes a photo of you and you explain the story, this is we're back area G, and then they get it, that feels really important, and it's like feels really touching, and like yeah, those sorts of moments.
Yeah. And those are the kind of people you meet running, just random strangers. And they give you a hug and you just go, wow, I've never met you before, but you mean so much to me. You have no idea how much that meant to me. Yeah, I don't know who that runner
Yeah,
is actually. And most of the time I do keep in touch with people, but it was, we're in a hurry to get to the start line and everything.
yeah.
So yeah, that meant a great deal to me.
Yeah, so I'm feeling, this mirror of life and the idea of the life and the keeping going and the focusing on what's important to you. And I'm just thinking about that integration and the running and your mojo. And when I'm thinking about sort of your book still running after all these tears, I'm just curious about at what point did you think, well, this is going to be a book. I'm going to write this down. And were there certain things that were helpful in writing the book or certain things that were tricky or particularly tricky, especially tricky? Because imagine talking about all of the loss, all of your losses and all of that pain and all the tears, pretty hard, take a lot of effort to write because it's emotional to read. So yeah, what was pivotal with that?
Well, it was the hardest book I've ever had to write. And I'm a very, very, what's the word? I glue my bottom to my seat and I get on with things nowadays. I just think there's no time to waste. Procrastination is just a waste of energy. So I really get going with things. And when I want to do something, I just finish it. And I just found I couldn't sometimes do more than 2 hours a day on this book. I was crying so much. I had to go through my husband's hospice notes and, discover all these upsetting things or revisit all these upsetting things, like they put his call buzzer in his paralyzed hand. So when I left him alone one whole night in the hospice, he couldn't call for help when he was in extreme pain. Just things
Oh,
like that. I had to just read these casual notes of terrible, horrendous things that happened to him, all his medical notes. And also I had to go through all the letters of complaint that I wrote, because I wrote 11 letters of complaint after he died, just to give me closure. But it was actually quite useful because when I came to write my book, I had it all documented very clearly, step by step, with the dates and the facts and what had happened. Um, so when I first started thinking about writing this book, it was more about my loss of running mojo, because it really concerned me that I'd lost my running mojo, and I actually knew there wasn't another book out there. So the original concept for the book was Lisa Jackson in every chapter tries something different to get her running mojo back. So she goes on a zombie run, or she reads a particularly inspiring book, or she starts signing up to park run or something like that. And then over time, I just realized I was gaining so much useful knowledge that I didn't know before, even though I'm a hypnotherapist and a hypnobirthing teacher, that it was really helping Graham. Like, we were putting it into practice and it was working. And I just started taking notes here and there. And I read a meter high pile of books. I mean, you cannot believe how many books I read on the subject of cancer and mindset and all of that kind of thing. So I just didn't want that knowledge to go to waste.
mm,
And then once I realized I was going to write a book, I used to take notes. Like, if somebody said something significant or there was a precious moment that happened, I would write it down. I've got two notebooks. So one was our positivity book. So in that, I wrote down every single thing positive about Graham's cancer. Like, his cancer was the most common type of mesothelioma, and hence the most well researched, and it had the longest survival rates. That kind of thing. Anything positive, our amazing surgeon said to us, what friends said to us, like, you, Graham, eat more broccoli than anyone I've ever met in my life. Your body's really strong, or people describing Graham as an ultra runner and how amazing that was. So I had the positivity book, but I also wrote notes to Graham in the book. We wrote each other messages in a book, just telling each other we loved each other, just our thoughts and feelings. about lots of things on the journey. And then I had lots of little random scrappy notes everywhere and this other notebook going on. And then I had to dig it all out, just my whole flat just became this big mass of paper of little scribbled things in bits and pieces. And then I wrote my book with a really good structure because I decided I wanted to have 30 chapters, which was one for each year that I was married. And then I knew the length of a book, which is generally 85,000 words. So it was 2,500 words per chapter. So I wrote each chapter. That helped me a lot because also on days when I just couldn't face doing the day Graham died or the day my dad died, I'd write something else like my speed dating adventures, which is much more lighthearted and really funny. Or I'd write funny things that happened during the cancer journey because there were many, So I didn't, nothing, this whole book is not one long misery memoir by any stretch of the imagination. Um, and then what happened was I then found the courage to actually look through my positivity book. I put that off to last because it's in Graham's handwriting. And I just thought, I'm not quite sure I'm ready to read it. And so that was the last thing I did. And I discovered so many nuggets and little love letters that he wrote to me in it and things I'd written to him. So I then went back to the book, having been very disciplined about my word count and added in all these extra little bits that I had discovered. And in the interim, what I struggled with most was because Graham's death was so agonizing, because he had bone cancer, the lung cancer spread to his bones. Um, the trauma that I went through, watching him die in agony, had literally overlaid all the 35 years of happy memories that I'd created with him. I could not remember. If you asked me, what was your happiest memory of Graham? I'd go, I don't have any. I mean, that
Yeah.
is ridiculous, because we were extremely happy together. We were best friends. We laughed all the time. So I then had time to really force myself to think of the happy times because if I just said to you, oh, he was an amazing husband, that wouldn't make you understand why his loss is so significant.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
when I say, he had brain tumors, so many in his brain that his brain scan looked like a bag of marbles. But he still staggered upstairs, he had lost his sense of balance with a cup of tea, spilling it all over the carpet to bring me tea, in the last few months of his life. That's the kind of man he was. And I had to remember all these little small that was a sad but positive thing as well about him. So that's what the book did. And all of a sudden it just expanded into 105,000 words. And when I handed it in, I thought my publisher, I'm not going to say how long it is. I'm just going to pretend I wrote to brief.
Yeah.
And they didn't say anything about the length. So I was really lucky. I've worked with this wonderful publisher, Summersdale, before. I had the same editor who is a friend now. So her sensitive editing, when she said sometimes the terrible things that went wrong, she just said there's too many of them. I know they happened, but it's just overwhelming for the reader. They're just gonna be in buckets the whole time, just crying their eyes out. So she guided me on which bits could be safely taken out without losing the main narrative of the story. So you won't believe it was longer than 105,000. So
Mm.
it's a very, very chunky book now. But it's got, some absolutely poignant moments that we shared together that are so precious. And I'm so glad my book forced me to remember them. And then the main thing is that I just want to give people a toolkit to get through these kind of experiences themselves.
Mm.
Because I always used to look at people on TV and they'd be fighting for their son, who was dying of cancer, who's 10 years old. And I just think, look at that couple. Like one minute they were just normal people, and now they are campaigning for their son to be taken to America for experimental surgery or treatment. And they're so young, and look how brave they are, and they're amazing. And then I looked at people, films about people dying, and I thought, God, you're so brave. And then all of a sudden you're thrown into that milieu yourself.
Mm.
And I had no experience and no knowledge of what end of life is like at all about palliative care. I didn't know how someone dies. I just didn't
Mm.
know. So everything I found out, I really wanted to share with people, right down to things like I kept Graham's body at home for 24 hours after he died because I just wanted to say my goodbyes to him properly. I wanted to bathe him one last time. And I didn't realize you're supposed to refrigerate a body. And I should have used ice packs, and I didn't. So it's just certain things like that that I think, people will find information that's useful to them. But there's information obviously about getting your running mojo back. And I hope it just inspires people to remember what they love about running, even if they haven't lost their running mojo. Talking to you now about that day that we shared together, that long 11 hours,
Mm.
40 minutes, one of the toughest marathons I've ever done, but also one of the most memorable, you know? So this book has just been an amazing journey for me And I've just had to pause. I mean, when I just couldn't go on anymore, I went and lay down. I got into a weird routine of writing early in the morning until I was exhausted. And then I'd go and sleep in the afternoon for 2, 3 hours. And then I'd resume writing in the evening, if I could. So it has
Mm,
taken over my life. I did a lot less running than I would have liked while writing it, but I think it's been worth it. And it's really coming to the end. I've got one more chapter for my audiobook to record, and then that's, recorded as well. And I've been writing some amazing articles on the subject of death and bereavement, running Mojo as well, and also about assisted dying.
yeah, yeah,
Because, before I probably would have supported it, but I wouldn't have campaigned for it. It just didn't touch my life. But once you see that there are many kinds of pain that cannot be medicated away, they just aren't. So, the charity Marie Curie, who actually looked after Graham when he was dying, they say that 1 in 3 people will experience unbearable suffering in the last week of their life. One
mm,
in three of us. It's not some tiny percentage of people. It's 1 in 3. I
mm,
actually thought the figure was much lower, but it's not. They did a better dying report last year that details all of this. So to me, that's such a shocking statistic because, one assumes that when one can send people to Mars, that pain is just something any nurse or hospice or doctor can deal with. So I was on the radio the other day, and the CEO of Care Not Killing, said that he was sure that in Graham's case, it was the fact that I decided to nurse him at home was the reason for Graham's pain. Graham was in more pain in the hospice than he was at home.
mm,
At home, I could give him Oromorph straight away, like within seconds, whereas in the hospice, it took them 20 minutes to go and fetch it and sign it out and administer it, and then another 20 minutes for it to work. So, this is not something that we can medicate away. It just isn't, not at the moment. So until that time comes when everyone can have a dignified, pain-free death, whichever way they choose, whether they want assisted dying or they don't want assisted dying, I will continue to campaign,
mm,
wholeheartedly. And the charity Dignity in Dying is doing such an amazing campaign. I have been so impressed with them. We do it with dignity. We respect other people's points of view. So people who don't agree with us, I always listen to them. I went and researched all the objections from Care Not Killing because I want to know what the objections are. And so obviously many of them are regarding safeguarding.
yeah,
And
yeah.
everyone
I
just
was
needs to
thinking
remember
that.
this is for terminally ill people.
Yeah,
This is not saying to your old granny, Granny, I think you've had enough time on earth now. We want our inheritance right now. Please, can you sign up for it? It just isn't like that. So I think
no,
there's been a lot of disinformation, a lot of misunderstanding, but there's a very narrow remit for who can access assisted dying. There's a lot of safeguards, with 2 doctors involved and a panel, including a judge, etc. So, I think we're all born and we all die. And when I taught hypnobirthing, I realized how few people have a good birth. So I've spent a lot of my
mm,
life campaigning to help people to have a better birth. And now it seems fitting that I'm helping to campaign for people to allow to have the death they want. It's a choice. You're not going to be forced into it. You can change your mind. They've often found that people who've signed up for it haven't needed to use it, but they've had the peace of mind that they can have a peaceful death if they want one or if they need one.
yeah, yeah. And I know how powerful and how important that is for you, and how actually being able to sort of share those things with other people and explain all the research that you've gone into that, like not just kind of assuming things. And it's interesting how actually, like, even from the hospice's point of view, sharing about how many people are in this sort of feeling of total pain. It's that physical, mental, psychological, spiritual pain, everything. And that actually who's to know, like, where that decision comes from, sort of thing, and how we might feel ourselves thing.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I mean, I feel everyone, if they're wondering about this, you just take a candle, it's a very easy experiment, and just stick your hand over the candle and see what pain feels like. Because we don't remember pain. It's actually a natural survival mechanism that we don't remember it. So just feel what pain feels like and think that could be your life, day in, day out, night and day, for several months.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, that's what I felt about the staff who took so long to get Graham's medication. It's just like
yeah,
if you were in pain, you'd be running down that corridor, not ambling when you had time to do it. Because I was always told we're in the middle of a handover. So yeah, I
yeah,
do think people need to bring the subject into their lives in a way that they can actually experience it themselves and realize what extreme pain is like. And I think if they thought about it, I mean, we euthanize dogs and cats because we
Yeah,
don't want them to suffer, but we don't give the same option to human beings. And that's what my husband said. He begged to die. When he was in the hospice, he was in such pain. And I found out later that most of the time his pain was on a scale of 3 out of 10. And when it was that, he never even bothered telling me he was in pain. That was his normal. And it was
yeah,
only when it got to 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 that he started making a fuss.
yeah,
So that's how much pain he was in constantly. And
yeah,
he just
yes, it's
begged to die.
always
He
in
said
that.
you wouldn't treat an animal like this, you
And
know?
I'd imagine his 3 out of 10 at that point was the equivalent of maybe 10 years ago, 10 out of 10
Well, do
or
you
50
know
out of 10. So
that
it, the perception changed.
he had an incredibly high pain threshold? They actually noticed that in the hospital when he had his surgery. The nurse was training a trainee nurse, and she actually said, I want to introduce you to this gentleman, but I want you to understand he's not the average. Most people are on, loads more pain medication than he is. So don't expect this of everyone who's had a 7-hour surgery like he has. He's exceptional. So Graham had an incredibly high pain threshold. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, compared to me, his 3 would have been a 10 for me. I have no doubt about it. And
Mm.
that's the kind of pain that people are living with every single day. For what reason? I knew at one point that Graham, he was too ill to fly to Switzerland to go to Dignitas. So by the time it got to that point, Dignitas was no longer an option. Not that we'd ever discussed Dignitas, but
Yeah,
people have to go to Switzerland months and months before they really should be going there because they have to be well enough to fly. And then they have to go alone because they fear prosecution. So to have a dignified death in the UK that doesn't cost £15,000, which most people don't have lying around a spare
no.
cash, is something I think everyone should have the right to choose. And if they don't want that choice and they do feel that, suffering is ennobling and it's part of their religious beliefs, well, that is absolutely fine. I would never override someone's religious beliefs. But that's why also, I do believe that the more we address the safeguard issue and anyone's concerns about this, I'm very willing to listen to people's objections because the more we can put into it, and that's what they're doing at the House of Lords at the moment, they're debating 1,000 amendments to it. But the more we can address everyone's fears, the better, it'll be, the bill will turn out to be
Mm.
a better bill.
Yeah, so rather than it being a straight off no, because that's the no for everybody, because there's some people that it might not be suitable for, like from a safeguarding point of view, then actually starting to really hear people and really get to know
Absolutely. They
what's
must
going
hear
on for them.
everyone, not just, my painful story. I want everyone to feel they were listened to. People with, disabled children, people with children with severe mental difficulties, depression, etc. Everyone should have a voice in this. But at the end of the day, just because some people don't want to have assisted dying for themselves, I'm really going to ask them very, very, very passionately, please don't deprive me of that choice because that is my greatest fear now. My fear used to be greatest fear was Graham dying. That's now happened. And my next greatest fear is me dying in the same kind of pain he died in. And if
Mm.
I can just have the reassurance that when the time comes, if I have a peaceful, beautiful death without needing assisted dying, fantastic. But if I'm in a lot of pain like he was, I want the option not to be in that pain.
Mhm. Yeah, and fair. I'm hearing the same for me as well. I'm just thinking like how, like often people say, they're not afraid of death, they're just afraid of the dying process.
Absolutely. That
And
is
when
exactly
it's
it. I'm
really,
not
really
afraid of
out of
death.
control.
And Graham wasn't afraid of death either. We talked about it a lot. He was not afraid of death, but the way he was dying was terrifying.
Yeah,
He actually had anxiety attacks in that hospice. That's how I found out about the paralyzed hand. Sorry, placing his call buzz in a paralyzed
yeah.
hand because they said he'd had anxiety attacks. And I just said, he's been ill for 4 years. And I've known him for 35. He's never once had a single like touch of anxiety, nothing.
Mm.
So why would he suddenly be having panic attacks in your hospice? And that's when that just came out, casually mentioned that his call buzzer was in his wrong hand.
Yeah, yeah. It's so important, isn't it, to be able to, advocate for people and to be able to actually say, but then if you're getting to the point of it's happened for so long and he's really suffered, then and you're so close to him. I only ever met him once, I think, at a race. I think I might have waved or something. I don't think we really even talked, but just that connection that you have with him and being able to sort of think, I can't even imagine like when he's done so much for you as well, and those moments are special. So
Oh
yeah.
yeah, no, it was honestly, I was by his side all the time. We were a joint team on everything. He signed every letter to the doctors, warm regards, Graham and Lisa. They made them very clear that we took decisions jointly. And it was an honor. It was an honor to accompany him to his death. It was an honor to accompany my father to his death as well. There's nothing, it was such um, I just, felt I could repay both of them for everything they contributed to my life. And it was an honor. And thank goodness, I work from home, I've got flexible working. I could, just take time out to do those things. I was very, very blessed. And a lot of people don't have that privilege. They have to go and commute to work and attend a job,
Yeah.
and I had that
Yeah.
time. So I know how lucky I was. And it really was an honor.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've been talking about lots of, your experience running and getting your mojo back and how that feeds in with Graham's illness and his death. And I'm just wondering about sort of where are you up to now?
Well, I now it's sort of 8 years since Graham was diagnosed. I am in a very good place. I've moved to Worthing. I'm running regularly. I'm attending parkrun every week now. This is my new, I'm on a bit of a streak with parkrun. I'm aiming for 100 half marathons, and I'm up to number 47 so far.
Oh, amazing.
And life is really good. I'm going to do a lot of traveling next year. I'm probably going to be connecting a lot with readers next year who read my book and have a lot of similar, stories of grief and bereavement to share with me. But I'm in a very good place, and a lot of that is thanks to running. One day when Graham was ill, a voice just came to me and it just said, "Running will be your salvation." And
Mm,
it sounded like someone with a megaphone standing next to me. I don't know where those words came from, but it was actually true. And the fact I've got running to kind of structure my life around, it's like the framework of my life. I'm going to enter loads more marathons, sorry, half marathons next year. There's some amazing ones that I did this year and loved so much I have to go back. One's called the River Run. That was the first
oh,
time it was run this year. Another one, the Three Forts Challenge. There's just a lot of adventures to be had. That I need to sit down, do my research, as I said, pause, do my research, plan
yeah.
my, as I call it, my dance card. I've got to plan my dance card for next year. And hopefully, Leslie, one of the races will be something where you come and
Yes.
run with me again, and we'll do like fancy dress. We'll think of a theme, or we'll dress you up as an inflatable flamingo, which is
Ah,
yeah, which is going to happen. Actually, we could both because I've actually got two outfits.
oh, I
I'm
love
launching
it.
my book.
I'm up for
Yeah.
that.
I'm launching my book at the National Running Show, so I bought these two outfits to so people can hand out flyers for my book. And yeah, I'm also launching new Flanchy activewear, which has got flamingos and crows on it, which
Yeah.
I've been honored, to have designed in my honor and Graham's honor. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting things going on next year, and I hope that you will be part of at least one of them, or at least two of them, the
Yeah.
show
But
and maybe a run.
well, when you said about Brighton, I was thinking, when's Brighton Easter time? Is
Yeah,
that something I can
April.
do? And I know that I've not done a marathon for quite a few years. I can't even think of the dates really. And my running mojo's gone a little bit, but I've also got a magnet from a race that I did that said I found my mojo. So it's amazing how, and that
Wow.
was in I think 2017, and then it's like I'd lost you lose your running mojo and then you find it again and you lose it and you find it again, and sometimes you think, well, I think it's lost forever, and then you kind of go, well, no, it's not because
No,
we've got this,
I've got the magnet.
and and so never has a phrase been so true as once a marathon runner, always a marathon runner. And
Absolutely. And another one is never say never again. Because I said
yeah,
never after my first marathon. I said never again before my last marathon. And look where we are today.
amazing. Yeah. So, and there may be tears, there may be laughter, there's like all of those things, and then you just keeping going. So amazing. So where would people sort of be looking to you to kind of find out about the book, or where's it, like tell us where to go to see you, to find you, to
Wonderful. I'm at the National Running Show on the 31st of January and the 1st of February. I'll
Yeah.
be doing a speech at about 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm on a panel about ultra running, but I'll be on the flanchy stand the whole weekend, wearing my fantastic flamingo and crow inspired
Yes. Oh, nice.
activewear. I'll be handing out dairy milks. The 20 best dressed people dressed as flamingos are going to get a free copy of my book. People who impress me with their pink attire, if they can't face up to being a flamingo, will get a dairy milk, and Chupa Chups are unavailable as well. We're going to have flamingo sunglasses to hand out to people who join in the fun. So that's where you're going to see me next. You'll obviously see me at the Brighton Marathon, and you can also, I've got a Facebook page. So look me up, Lisa Flamingo Jackson. I'm also Lisa Flamingo Jackson on X, and on Insta. I can't remember what I am, but I'm going to be on Insta, but I'm not at the moment. So
Yeah.
just look out for me on Instagram. I'm going to become an influencer on Instagram. I'm going to be dancing around all over the hills around Worthing, but I haven't got
Yeah.
around to doing that yet.
Yeah. I mean, you're already an influencer for sure, Lisa. I think it's just that
Oh.
you don't really know it. Or you
That's the thing. I've got to unleash my inner influencer, but I've got to get over my fear of high tech before that. So there's
yeah,
so much stuff I have to learn about doing technical stuff. So unlike you, I haven't bitten that bullet yet. So I really admire you for doing that, Leslie. And thank you so much for having me today. I so appreciate it. And it was so lovely, talking to you. And I hope we share another journey together sometime soon.
absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. So one of the things that has really struck me about talking to Lisa just now, talking to you, Lisa, just now, is how courageous you've needed to be. And I know that I saw that in you before, like when I first met you, when seeing your 100 marathon run, doing all of these, that message, and then that kind of carrying on. And and so I really kind of appreciate you just being so generous with your story and in just here, you shared so much, and it's just that tip of the iceberg, really, of what you're really experiencing. And then in the book, there's so many moments where you just think, I really, I get it. I can see him. I can see how they were together. It's like, oh, that's really cool. You really meeting a person, not an illness, and
Yeah,
that feels really important. And
I
some of the
always say,
work,
remember how someone lived, not how they died.
yeah, that's true. So thank you so much, and
Thank
yeah,
you.
but yeah, keep going,
I
and
will.
thank
And
you
you
for so
too.
much for coming on.
It's
But
such a pleasure.
thank you everyone for listening to this podcast. If you have any questions or if you would like to leave a review, then you are very welcome to leave a review on here or reach out to us, to myself or to Lisa. And if there's any topics that you are thinking that I'd like to hear about that, or I've got a story that I want to share that's relevant to this idea of stepping into a new pace. And we all are navigating life. We've never done this before. We're just having to work without a rule book. So just reach out and we can explore that too. So thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.